How are you,
Hello.
Jeff?
Good.
Okay.
I'm good. You okay?
Yeah, we've been talking about you while you weren't here, you see.
I hope in glowing terms.
Oh, obviously in glowing terms. Um, anyway, should we crack on, shall we, with the interview?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. Okay, the new album by DBA, Celestial Songs, which is here, I don't know if you can see that. Celestial Songs is out on the 8th of September. It's available as a CD, 2LP, and a box set, and all the purchasing links will be just below this video. The first question I have is for Jeff, actually, or Chris can answer if he wants to. Is how did DBA come about?
Yeah, well, we go back to 2010 when I first met Chris, and Chris was involved with Trevor Horn on a various project,
Mhm.
and so we got we did a show at the in London at the Supper Club, playing Buggles songs and all sorts of other things, and that's how I got to meet Chris. And I think that at that point we had a chat and said, it'd be really nice to do some writing together. So at that time, Chris was moved to LA, and I was in LA working on a Yes album. So we saw that as a good opportunity to get together and write some stuff. And here we are today, still knocking on. And I think it's a great project. It's something that we both have a lot of love for, and that's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, well, it's a great album. I listened to it again last night. I'm interested, Chris, in the title Celestial Songs. Is this a concept album? The reason I think maybe a concept album is because you've got a narrator running through it. What's the purpose of the narrator?
I mean, Barney's been part of the sort of gang, if you like, for the last three albums. I met him through another project, actually. I was producing a record, and he was working for the label, and he sent me an email, and it was a long, sort of really well constructed email. And I thought, that's fantastic grammar. This guy's got to be a writer. And I said, are you a writer? He said, yeah, I am actually. And he sent me some of his work, blah, blah, blah. So he's been involved with us for the last three albums. And the title sort of came about because one of the songs on the album is called Beyond the Stars, and we had that quite early on.
Yeah.
So then there was a stars thing going on, kind of thing. And also, Jeff and I really got into the whole alliteration titles. It seemed like the last three albums have Roger Dean sleeves, and they have alliteration in the title.
Yeah.
And it kind of became a device. A bit like Asia and Alpha, and it kind of we discovered our thing, if you like. So it just sort of came about because of that, really.
Yeah. I'm interested. I've got to ask you, Jeff. I mean, what's the difference in writing for a project like DBA and writing for Yes?
I think they are very different, but I'm always in search of a melody, and that's the thing that is always, I think, through all the stuff that I've ever written, I've been very conscious that the melody is very important, and I don't think that whatever the genre of music, I think that that's a very important ingredient, whatever way you look at it. Whether you're doing playing a solo like Eric Clapton or someone like that, that solo is melodic, and it's something, or Pink Floyd, Dave Gilmour, solos are really melodic, and so I think that's an indication of music that has sort of meaning and purpose, is that melody is very important. And I know Chris relates very much to that. And of course the chord sequences and the chord structures and that sort of thing, and the arrangements. I don't think there's a great difference between the way that I apply myself necessarily to different projects and different things that I'm working on.
I think melody is more important, perhaps, for something like DBA than it is perhaps for Yes.
No, I think that if you look at the memorable stuff of Yes, it is very melodic, and I think that it's not all weird stuff, it's melodic songwriting, and you can sing a lot of John Anderson's vocal lines in your head, they're memorable, and I think that's something that we certainly I try and strive to achieve is making those memorable melodies.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a question for Chris. Actually, it's quite a bit of a stinker. Actually, it's quite a deep question. I think is that as you described, keep on moving as nostalgic. I'm just wondering, do you see nostalgia as a romanticizing of the past or a dissatisfaction with the present?
Oh, interesting question. I definitely romanticize the past, but I think I'd rather do that than look back at the past and be horrified.
Yeah.
It's almost like a film life, isn't it? And I look back on my life through a kind of film lens, if you like. I sort of see it like sort of movies when I'm writing. And I think it provides a lot of inspiration for me. The places I've been and the places I'm going to. It's interesting that with Halcyon Hymns, the last album, I was living in the States then, and it was very pastoral and very English.
Mm.
And now that I'm back in London, I'm sort of wistful about America, and it's just wherever I've left, it becomes like a sort of a magical, it takes on a bit of magic, and I've always been like that. I'm fascinated with the past and, sort of not rewriting it, but using it as inspiration.
You're kind of always longing to be elsewhere, maybe.
Possibly, yeah. It's part of my personality, I think.
Well, you talk about nostalgia, looking back. I mean, I do that all the time, but I wonder whether it's an age thing with me, really, where I tend to be grumpy about the present and romanticize the past too much. A question go either way, really. I'm just interested. How did you get Dave Bainbridge involved with this project? He's a remarkable guitar player.
Oh, he's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, we had a great guitarist. We played a few shows a few years ago, 2018, and we had a great guitarist playing with us. But something happened, and he had commitments. And he couldn't make one of the shows that we planned. So Geoff knew Dave Bainbridge, who's just become amazing. Gosh,
he's really added an enormous amount to the DBA canon. I think that he's a very, very musical mind, and certainly I was always very impressed with the stuff that he did with with Life Signs and some of his earlier stuff with Iona. And the interesting thing is that we both went to the same music college, and we both had the same piano teacher. So it's an interesting coming together, really, of bringing Dave on board, and he's just been amazing. And think that we're very lucky to be able to broaden DBA's music by having these great musicians involved, such as Andy Hodge on bass and Ash Sohn on drums. It's really added another dimension to our music.
I mean, certainly his guitar work on that Life Science album, Altitude, is just absolutely fantastic, I think. Geoff, if I may, you said you wanted to, for this album, you wanted to achieve a wider variety of aural dimensions on this album. How have you achieved this, and how have you achieved this?
Well, I think that we didn't want to be pigeonholed and stereotyped in what we do. So I think that some of the songs have got, they're sourced in maybe 80s disco music, and some of them are classical music standards. I think that we've got this very wide amount of influences that we, we're not duty bound to go in a particular style, and really it's whatever mood takes us. And certainly, I send ideas to Chris, and they'll probably be all quite diverse, but somehow we managed to tailor them into our mold, and I think it gives us a fairly unique sound that we cross a lot of frontiers with the music.
Yeah. I'm interested. One of the songs on the album is actually called "A Darker Side of Fame." I'm just wondering, was there something specific that was the inspiration for that one?
I mean, lyrically, the inspiration has just been around it a lot, and obviously Geoff's been in the business a long time, but so have I. It's been decades, and so you meet people, and I've met people along the way that started out as fresh faces and ended up, no longer on the planet, and it's just like what a strange business it can be. And and it's quite a sort of it's quite stark, when that happens, because really music's just a thing of joy for me. So when I see the other side of it, it's kind of it's a bit of a shock. And I think fame is a whole different kettle of fish, and it was always something I was a bit suspicious of personally. I love performing and I love making records, but the whole fame side of it kind of worried me a little bit because of the casualties.
Yeah,
Good song
absolutely.
about that.
Yeah. Geoff, what's your take on fame?
It's I totally empathise with Chris on that front, because I've known people that have really been incredible talents that have that they've gone to the other side and their lives have been destroyed by the music business can be a very, very cruel business, and it's people go it's not a very supportive business. So people if they have problems with whatever, abuse of whatever, or they're just very, very, a lot of creative artists are very gentle souls and very I suppose you could say that they can be in a critical position mentally a lot of the time, because part of the creative process is being on the edge, and I think that's something that I've seen, people that I've worked with have that, have this dark side, so I suppose in the days of mental awareness that we're going through now, particularly, I think it's very relevant for a lot of people that have somehow gone off the track with their lives and their careers.
Do you think in the current music industry, the way it is, we wouldn't have got casualties like, I know, Syd Barrett and Peter Green and people like that? Because was it a lot harsher in those days than it is now, or is it the other way
I
around?
don't think so necessarily, because I think that it's a very, if you, I'm not saying musicians, but people on the shows like X Factor and the reality shows, they're only given a slight glimpse of opportunity. Maybe that's what they crave, but at the same time, that as soon as they're gone, they're gone. And no one remembers the guy that, or very rarely remembers the guy that came ninth on the X Factor in 2007. I mean, that's what happens, and or they get taken on and they get dropped by the record label. So it's I don't think it's any different really. I think people do burn themselves out.
Yeah. Chris, I've got to ask you. You've worked with a whole plethora of big names, and my daughter's a big fan of Lana Del Ray. I'm just going to ask you, what is it like working with Lana Del Ray and Madonna? Is she a prickly character?
Uh, Both.
Don't get yourself sued.
No. I mean, they're both completely different sort of characters, people. Lana was great, it's good fun. And Madonna was great fun as well. I mean, Madonna was interesting because she was happy to continue working at 3 a.m. and I was kind of flagging. And at one point, she said to me and the engineer, she said, "You look like you need bed," But she was prepared to keep going. I mean, she's like she's totally, you know, she's totally driven. So
Yeah.
that was interesting. I remember playing some keyboard sounds, and she said, "Oh, that sounds like some old sort of record. I can't remember which, but it reminded me that she's very knowledgeable about music.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's interesting working with all these people. It's
Yeah, and
great.
that last album, I think the latest album Lana Del Rey's put out, Ocean, there's a tunnel under Ocean Boulevard, is absolutely fabulous album. Were you involved with that one at all, or was it just the some of the earlier albums?
Not that album, no, didn't do that.
That's a great record, it really is. Likewise, Geoff, I'd like to ask you a similar question. Is you worked with Mike Oldfield, I believe. I wonder what he was like. What was that like working? What was that experience like for you?
He was very interesting guy, actually, because he's the best engineer I've ever worked with. I mean,
Wow.
he was incredible. Uh, I'd say, maybe we should put a little bit of reverb on that. He said, "I've done it." So I'd say, well, maybe we'll put a little compression. I've done that. It was so really quick, and So he was great to work with in that respect, because I really respect, not just, I mean, he's a great musician and a great writer, but he was also, this brilliant engineer, because obviously when he made Tubular Bells, he was only about 19 or 20, so he engineered all his own stuff at that point. So so that was the thing that impressed me most about him. But yeah, very nice guy, and we got on really well.
Yeah, okay. The Heart-Shaped Hole, what's inspired that number?
Lyrically, it's sort of, I suppose it's about false gods or hollow, sort of searching for things that are hollow, and I sort of picture a kind of, a light entertainer sitting in a dressing room, hundreds of miles from home and estranged from kids and family, and it's about the pursuit of sort of it's like fame ebbing away and the pursuit of that at any cost. And again, it's a bit sort of similar to Dark Side of Fame in that I've known people like that would put that before anything, even if they were playing to 99 people in a club. It's like, and it's one of those kind of characters, really.
Right. Fame's, I mean, being on the outside, fame always looks as if it's a kind of madness, that something takes possession of you, maybe, possibly.
I think creativity is a kind of madness. I mean, we're all sort of driven mad by our creativity, I think, from some sort of perspective. It's just it's a blessing and a curse, can be, because you can't not do it, but it can, it can sort of, keep you awake at night.
Yeah, absolutely. One more question, actually, is fascinating. Beyond the Stars, I mean, it's got an epic piece. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, about the idea, themes, and construction of. Jeff can go first, and then whoever.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic closing track for the album, because it encompasses virtually all that's about DBA. The progressive modern music. I think that it's got all the elements. It's a bit of an epic, yeah, agreed, and but I think it encapsulates everything that Chris and I are about. So a very, if anyone was going to pick one track off the album, I'd say listen to that one, because that does sum it up. It's a great closing track.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you got anything to say about that one, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it's lyrically sort of about how everything must sort of pass, and it's sort of everything will end, but it's not maudlin. It's a celebration, saying let's get on with it, kind of thing. But I agree with Jeff, actually, that it's a sum of its parts. It's sort of everything that we do. There's a bit of that and there's a bit of that, and it's kind of bringing it all together, which is very much how Jeff and I write. Kind of interesting way of working, but we stitch things together and it somehow works. Well,
I've got Chris. I'm interested in asking you, as a songwriter, who's your favourite songwriter and why? It's a stinker, isn't it?
Favorite songwriter. It's quite a tough one, actually.
I'm a huge fan of Paul Simon. I just love Paul Simon. I think he's.
I mean, it's really difficult, because it's very difficult because you say something like, well, early McCartney was good, but he also did a lot of rubbish as well. And then there are bits of John Lennon that I think are great, but he also did a lot of rubbish. Yeah. So I don't know. I like a bit of sort of.
Are you a Dylan fan?
I'm not a huge Dylan fan, but I think he's a great lyricist. I'm very much like a melody person, like Jeff says.
I think,
melody.
If you ask me that question, I think Sting's a fantastic writer. I think that not just through the Police period, but his own solo stuff is very consistently good. And he's very conscious of melodies and great productions as well. Co-produced with Hugh Patron. But as Chris said, it's almost impossible, because you look at the greats, like Elton John and Billy Joel, and so you're hard to pick holes in people like that, because their catalogue is huge and their output has been magnificent.
Yeah, Absolutely.
I mean,
Interesting.
I'll go off now, and I'll just think, oh, why didn't I mention that?
Yeah.
I always question I sometimes ask is which is the better album, Pet Sounds or Sgt Pepper? If you had to choose between one of those two,
Personally, I don't think Sgt Pepper's the best Beatles album. I think there's a lot of things like Lovely Rita. It just doesn't do anything for me. But obviously, She's Leaving Home and A Day in the Life are fantastic. But
Rubber Soul is my favourite Beatles album.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But I mean, there are beautiful moments on Pet Sounds that I would take over Sgt Pepper any day. But different days, different islands.
Yeah, it's strange that because Pet Sounds was John Wetner's favourite album. I think that influentially, that all those vocal harmonies and the way that they put that together was a particular way of working. That the Beatles, as Chris said, there are probably better Beatles albums, but at the same time, it's hard to knock the Beatles, isn't it? Because they were groundbreaking, revolution.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of bands now, if they had A Day in the Life on their album, that would be good enough, wouldn't it? And they kept doing it, multiple times. But for me, it's just always cited as Sgt Pepper, but it's not my favorite Beatles album.
I think it was incredibly influential and groundbreaking. Like you, I don't think it's the finest Beatles album.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's very British, and I think that the Beach Boys are very American, and so that it's very hard to compare the two. Blackburn, Lancashire, to be in a lyric. Who'd have thought that?
Yeah,
I think if Sgt Pepper had Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane on it, it might just be the best album ever. But the fact that they those songs off shows how good the beat.
Yeah, George Martin said he really seriously regretted leaving those songs off that album. But anyway, so this album, DBA Celestial Songs, is available on the 8th of September. It's as a CD, 2LP box set. Purchasing links just below. By the way, Chris, crowdfunding, that's what the word we were looking for when we talk about Marillion. That crowdfunding, that's what people do these days. It seems to work really well for them.
Yeah, they were the first time that sort of did that, weren't they?
I believe they were, yes. I believe they were. Anyway, Chris and Geoff, thank you so much for coming on here and chatting about this wonderful new album. I hope it sells loads. I'm sure my subscribers will dash out and buy it. You enjoy the rest of your day anyway. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Barry. Bye now.